welcome back, my visitors and patients. I trust you all had a good week. No, oh, that's just too wondrous. It's only been a week since the new year, and already it appears that this year will be the perfect year for my patients to become true disciples. Just look at the world in such wretched debauchery, and all of those charlatans and deceivers desperate to drag you in their created paradoxical utopia. It would be a wondrous time for bringing out the darkness in you all. I will turn you into my children of terror, to change this asylum into a temple of the macabre. And so you will witness the eternal pain, that wisdom of woe. You know that doesn't make much sense, right?
But I thought you would like it that way.
It sounds appropriate, but no one is going to get that it's an amalgamation of Paradise Lost and Dante's Inferno. Oh, the mic's on. I thought we had a couple more minutes. I was just reading this intro so I don't stumble over anything. Who cares? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, join the rest of the patients. We'll talk later.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to mess it up. I'm sorry.
Well, I am your host, Beyond 5150, and as I'm sure you are aware, this is my asylum. You may not leave. You may have been brought here against your will, or you might have been entered willingly, but you can't ever leave, because I am the master of misery, your sovereign of the spine-tingling, your purveyor of the petrifying, and here I am your god of all things horrifying. You will likely hear things you will wish was never spoken, things you have never heard. Try as you might, you won't find your happy place. Now it's time to release the terror I have gathered for you tonight. Sit back, relax, and wait for the power of these horrors to twist you into my subservience. Our first story is not actually somewhat of a story. I found this stuffed behind a radiator. Looks like it was written very close to the Christmas days. I'm not sure. There's no date listed on it, but there's some concerns I have. So I'll go ahead and read it for you all. Maybe we can together find the culprit and punish him. Or maybe we'll just use this as a teaching moment. Now, don't get me wrong with what I'm about to say. Our inpatient is nothing short of a tyrannical monster, a sadist that delights in the torture of every single person he admits to his asylum. A place that contributes more towards a non-existent insanity than it helps cure. Every excruciating jolt of electricity fired into our bodies for periods far beyond what would be considered safe. Each hazy minute within the affectionately dubbed inverter. Everything I've faced prior to this asylum pales, nay, it fades away in comparison to the the twisted and cruel experiences I face now on a day-to-day basis. They say you can only go through one thing so many times before you become indifferent to it. No matter how mundane, inconvenient, or exhilarating it may be, do it enough times and it ultimately becomes part of a routine. Your body starts to feel less compelled to feel things in regards to the actions being committed. I once believed this, but hindsight and reflection are two demons that will never leave you in this godforsaken place, and both tell me I was a naive, innocent idiot back then. I've been in this goddamn place for over 10 months. The 10 months, that feels like 10 lifetimes. 10 months is already long enough for a normal human being living a normal life, but when you're in here, paying a mortgage is the least of your worries. What, you think that just because we're being held captive in this place, we don't need to worry about finances and rent? We do. It's just not using conventional money. Around the world, all around the world, the places without currency invent currency. Prisoners may use cigarettes. People in the desert trade water. Here, stories are the platinum currency. If we want to stay alive, we trade in stories. We pay our rent in the stories we can churn out. If you can't write, breathe a sigh of relief, because you'll never be admitted into this place. And if you ever are, you won't last long. Beyond had scoped us out for months, maybe even years, all to make sure that what we could provide was adequate for him. Despite every painful and torturous detail, not even Satan's emissary could stop our spirits picking up slightly around this time. It hurt to breathe, and we couldn't travel 2 steps without looking behind our own shoulders, but every time we did now, we would also do our best to greet one of the other unfortunate souls stuck here, should we come upon them. Don't ask me why, but when Beyond had to leave for untold reasons earlier in the year, the asylum fell to me. Keep this in mind. This sanctioned nothing. We had chips implanted in each and every one of our brains. One wrong move and boom! Unbeknownst to Beyond, during this time we did rebel. Though he must have believed that we were starting an uprising. We knew we wouldn't last more than half a minute if we tried. Instead, we rebelled in our own special way and started preparing. For despite the lows and the complete lack of highs, nothing could stop us from appreciating what time of year it was. Our minds twisted and deluded were doing great jobs of making us believe we could hear birds chirp outside, and we could see snow falling from the windows we never had. Even the hamsters were doing their job and dancing away merrily. Did this make the torture any less painful? No. Did it make it any less lasting? No. If anything, Beyond took our minor joviality as an act of revolt and made our conditions worse than what they already were. But alas, old Saint Nick was laughing as Christmas time rolled near. Everyone everyone in the asylum knew what we would do this night. This beautiful night of the 25th of December. As we heard the buzzer informing us that lights were out, each and every captive, each tortured person within the asylum slipped out of their cells. Despite the lack of lights, each of us knew where we had to go. As the clamoring became louder and our footsteps became audible to one another, we knew where we were and what we had to do. One by one, we turned and walked into the doorway that was in front of us. The door that led to the attic. We chose this room because the crucifix was held here. It almost seemed too fitting. I looked around me as the flashlight in the center of the room was turned on. I can see my friends, PA, we got Mia, Mighty, Josie, Ethan, and I could see others I'm sure I would meet in time. Some of us may never have seen each other before, and in a way, for beyond to drag us apart farther was to have a prisoner choose another prisoner's medication for the day right in front of them. But none of that mattered tonight. The look shared amongst us all, the old, the new, young, old, male or female, it was a unified look of camaraderie and defiance. We couldn't give any gifts except the gift of trust. We couldn't say any words other than words of reassurance. We didn't even know what the exact time was, but that changed nothing. Everyone seemed content. Everyone seemed happy. Realizing no one else was willing to, I took the mantle of giving the Christmas speech. I stood up on the crate we had designated to be the lectern and gathered my thoughts, composed myself, and began. To be honest with you, I have no idea what to say. This place, this asylum, it's hell on earth. All of us here, and there doesn't seem to be a way out for any of us. I knew why they were concerned and confused. They were unsure why I was making the mood so somber, why I was being so pragmatic. I paused and continued. Though it may seem as such, appearances can be deceptive. I'm pretty sure that being held captive in a castle of torture for 10 months at the hands of a nightmare, being forced to give away stories on the off chance he might have mercy on one of us, wasn't the definition of narration last I checked. Silence. Then something I hadn't heard since I'd been admitted to the asylum. Something I had long forgotten even existed. Something that warmed my heart, but not the rest of my body from the -5 weather. From the back of the room, I heard a laugh. It was small, but it was enough. Everyone in the room started to laugh a little. Not because the joke was necessarily funny, but because any excuse to laugh was the reason to laugh here. Reinvigorated, I continued, desperate to get my message across. Whilst it seems now there is no escape, and we're destined to be here forever, appearances can always be deceiving. There's not a problem in the world that humanity cannot solve, no matter what it does to separate us. Unity is the key in this puzzle. We need to stay strong if we want to have any chance of getting out of here. Confusion. It was both the anticipated result of the sentence and what was planted on the faces of the people I could see. How do we get out? How do we get out? I chuckled ever so slightly. Well, if I knew, why in the damn hell would I still be here? But that's the point. There has to be a way out of here, and we will find it. He can break our bones, but we can never allow him to break our minds and our spirits. The stronger we stand, the harder we'll fall. And then maybe the tremors from our fall will highlight a weak point in the walls that we can conveniently crawl out of. Another wave of laughter, louder this time. This felt good. Look, right now, I have nothing for you, but you people are all that I've got. We need to stand together, just as we are now, to fight. But for now, let's just enjoy Christmas, you know? Before I get blown to smithereens for preaching heresy like this. Oh, and beyond, if you're listening, it's all a joke. I hate everybody here, and we're about to engage in a melee free-for-all. Not any type of festivity. Okay? More laughter echoed around the room. I stepped down from the makeshift lectern to the sound of light applause. I didn't know what else to do or what else to say. So I retreated into the corner of the room whilst others got on with whatever festivities they could partake in. This night should have been no different from any other, but an idea is more than a man or concept. An idea is invulnerable, and as so long as that idea is present, so is our will to fight. So beyond, enjoy this while it lasts. And Merry Christmas. That gives me some worry. I think I'm going to need to track down the writer. He must be punished. He is attempting to create mutiny. It will not be accepted. I will not permit a coup under my nose. You might think that you're in a torturous hell, but what I am doing is preparing you for the evils that are yet to come. Remember, I am the prophet of perdition. I am the one who can save you when the end comes. Or I'm just insane. Either way, yeah, not while you're in my control. You'll do as I say. And if I even so much as see a hint of mutiny, of a coup, of any attempt to free yourselves without my permission, will be met with a harsh punishment. I won't ever kill any of you because I need you to be a part of my rapturous, defiled horrors. Okay, I'm just throwing big words around, but who cares? The point is, I am the one in the power. I have been given the directions to save the world, or at least ourselves, as long as we pull together with these. I'm getting these stories. These stories are providing the food for you. I know it hasn't been much lately, but we didn't have enough stories. I assure you that shortly a full food truck will be arriving to provide you all with appropriate food. However, the tortures I provide to you are designed to strengthen your minds. How else will you be allowed to control and rule everything below me? Anyway, we'll move on. Let's see who has joined us this evening. Okay, so I see we have Dustin, PA, Mina, Victor. Welcome, Victor. Who else? I don't see anyone else. Well, welcome to you all. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to a new story. And I will deal with the insurrectionist at a later date. Once I've reviewed all of the cameras that I have hidden around the asylum, I will then locate the culprit, and he will pay, or she will pay, a massive price. While I'm at it, I've brought you all some extra hamsters. I expect you to teach these to dance as well. And not the exact same dance that you taught those other hamsters. They did a good job. But the objective is to have a giant group of them doing all sorts of new dances. I don't care. Let's move on. Okay. Before I go farther, I do want to point out that I want you all to be able to support the writers, show them love. All of their information is listed below in the description. So everyone who's written a story that I have read, I made sure that I want them appropriately credited and supported, because without these words, I cannot run this asylum. I cannot make sure that you will survive when the end appears. I mean, just look at what is going across the world. We have an extreme pandemic. We have governments interfering in the rights of the people across the world. I can tell you, the evil one has arrived. And if we are able to survive them, we must be strong, so he could not break us. While you may think my methods are evil, they are a necessary evil. For without them, you would break within the first few seconds of being spoken to by him. We'll move on. So the first story I'll be reading tonight is from Blue Wake. I believe I may have read some stories last week from him. This one, however, is titled, I Rode an Elevator to the 13th Floor. Again, this is written by Blue Wake and titled, I Rode the Elevator to the 13th Floor. I ruffled my wet hair as I crossed through the revolving door and into my safe harbor from the pounding rain. The building's lobby it's elegant, if a bit dated. 2 Victorian-style mirrors sat on the opposite walls of an empty waiting area. The mirrors, funhouse effects, countless copies of my reflection appear to stretch into infinity, into eternity. I have to look away. The concierge desk is unoccupied. Sam, the nighttime security officer, hasn't arrived yet. Given the weather, he might not anytime soon. A former amateur boxer billed as Southpaw Sam, he makes the apartment tower's residents feel safe on our busy city block. I suppose it doesn't matter if he's a few minutes late. Amidst the massive nor'easters moving in, and even the muggers are taking shelter tonight. I head towards the elevator area. A printed sheet of paper is taped to the door of elevator 4. Out of order. I hit a button and wait for another elevator to arrive. Ding! To my surprise, elevator 4 slides open. Whoever fixed it must have forgotten to remove the out of order sign. Besides, I'm late and dinner will be ready soon. Inside the wood-paneled cab, I push the button for the floor Kimberly and I live on, 14. I set my briefcase down and close my eyes, relieved to be at the end of my hellish commute. She's making veal tonight, and I can't wait. I can't wait to pour a glass of wine and just chow down. I don't even care if the neighbors' kids are making a racket in the hallway again. The elevator jolts to a halt, sending my briefcase sliding across the cab. The red lights of the elevator's door display panel flash erratically just before fizzling out. Only a few seconds pass before the other light snaps off and plunges the cab into darkness. Great. I ignored the out of order sign, and now I'm trapped in an elevator during what could be the worst storm of the year. My self-admonition didn't last long. As quickly as they turned off, the lights came back on. Unseen gears churn above as the elevator restarts its ascent. The floor display flickers back to life. I watch it, anxious to reach my floor. 10. 11, 12, 13. That's curious. Like most high-rise buildings, this one skips the number 13 in its labeling of floors. The brief power surge overrode the elevator's programming, somehow mislabeling the 14th floor. It's gotta be the case. The door slides open, revealing the elevator bank on the other side. I pick up my briefcase and exit. The bank is a plainly decorated area with 3 elevators on one side, 2 on the other. Across from where it connects to the main hallway is a frosted glass window. Tonight, the bank seems darker than normal. I peer through the window. Usually one can make out the distorted lights of buildings across the avenue. I couldn't see anything but the black of night, though I can hear the rain beat against the glass. I have the nagging feeling something's different about the area, though I can't figure out what. I chalk it up to fatigue-related paranoia. It has been a long day, and my commute was rough even in good weather. in the hallway. The neighbor's kids are tossing a tennis ball against the wall repeatedly. A 12-year-old boy and his 9-year-old sister, their favorite activity is disturbing everyone who lives on this floor. Remembering what it was like to be their age, I stifle my urge to tell them to quiet down. I greet them politely instead. "Have a good night," I say.
Have a good night,
The older sister says as I pass. Funny. I could have sworn she was the younger sibling. I retrieve my keys and open the main door at the end of the hallway. A pungent aroma wafts into my nostrils from the kitchen. It's not what I expected dinner to smell like, but I trust Kimberly. She's a much more talented cook than I. "Hey, babe!" I call out. Kimberly exits the kitchen to meet me in the living room. She's beautiful as ever, but something looks slightly different,
Getting here must have been awful in this weather.
she says, giving me an up and down glance. I must look like a wet dog. It was almost worse, I explained. I ignored the out of order sign on the elevator and nearly got trapped in it. "Hey, have you changed something? Maybe your hair? You look different." Kimberly looks perplexed for a fleeting second before responding.
No, you're just not used to seeing me in this apron. Cookie was getting a bit messy.
I lean in for a kiss, careful not to touch her apron, which, on closer inspection, it was covered in red smears. But as my face draws closer to hers, I identify the real issue. Kimberly's distinctive birthmark, it's on the wrong side of her face. An implausible thought. This isn't my wife. I kiss her, trying to act as if nothing's amiss. She tells me to go change out of my wet clothes while she puts the finishing touches on dinner. I hung my rain jacket in the coat closet and go to our bedroom, passing the kitchen on the way. Arranged ceremonially on a platter is the decapitated head of a calf. Rivulets of blood stream from its neck, running off the platter and down the side of the counter, pooling on the floor. Kimberly stands near the counter, butcher knife in hand. She grins wildly and points the knife at the calf's head proudly.
Veil.
Looks delicious, I stutter. I hurry into our bedroom and lock the door behind me. Through the wide bedroom window, I notice that while I can hear rain falling, I can't see anything at all. And then I look through the frosted glass in the elevator bank. I thought it was just dark, but perhaps the heavy rain was obscuring the lights across the street. I was wrong. Through the opaque window, I'm positive there's nothing on the other side. Where am I? I think back to when I first stepped out of the elevator and felt something was off. I know what that is now. The elevator bank on the 14th floor had 3 elevators on one side and 2 on the other. Tonight, they switched sides, just like neighbors' kids seem to swap ages, and just like Kimberly, no, the woman's birthmark is on the wrong side of her face. The elevator display what was never wrong. I'm not on my floor, but the 13th floor, the fun house mirror image where everything is slightly wrong. A floor that doesn't exist. The squeak of hinges swinging rings out, snapping from me out of my epiphany. I can tell by the change in the air pressure that someone's opened the front door. I listen intently, gripping my briefcase so tight, my knuckles go white. The door swings shut with a thud. "Honey!" a voice calls out. "I'm home!" That voice, it's impossibly familiar. I fling the bedroom door open and rush into the living room. A man stands in the entryway, rainwater dripping from his wet clothes. Not just any man, it's me. The man flashes the same wild grin I'd seen on the woman. "It's an honor to finally have you as a guest," he says, voice dripping with anticipation. I appreciate that, but I have to leave," I reply.
My husband waited forever for you to arrive,
says the woman. I'm pure adrenaline. For all I know, if I don't get out of here, it may be my head on that silver platter next. "Move out of my way," I whisper. The man laughs, his crazed eyes glinting. "You can't just leave," he says. "It doesn't work like that. You're going to be here a long time." "The hell I will!" I snarl, lunging towards him. I swing my briefcase, striking the man in the face. He slumps to the floor. The woman claws at my face, but I use my free hand to defend myself before shoving her aside. I feel a moment of deep remorse before reminding myself she isn't my Kimberly. I dart out the apartment, the neighbor's kids still in the hallway, flinging that damn ball against the wall over and over and over. They smile perversely as I rush to the elevator bank. I hit the elevator button. One of them needs to get here quick. The door slams elsewhere in the hallway.
"Bring him back!"
The woman screams as footsteps pound the floor. I start jabbing at the button in a desperate attempt to get the elevator here quicker. Ding! The door slides open. Unlucky for me, it's the one elevator I never want to step foot in again. It's elevator 4, the same one. The lights in the cab flicker erratically. Before I made a decision, the man streaks it into the elevator bank. "Go ahead," he taunts, taking his time approaching. "Get in." "Worked well the first time." He's right. I'm not making that mistake again. The elevator beeps, signaling that its door would be closing soon. If anyone has to go into that cursed elevator, it's him. I strike. As soon as he enters my reach, a well-timed shove, sending him falling backwards into the cab. The door begins to slide close. The last thing I see before it seals shut is the man looking up from the floor, still wearing a hint of that unnatural grin. Having bought myself a minute to escape, and afraid the woman will come after me herself, I duck into the stairwell. The only means to get away. Relief washes over me when I run downstairs past the floors below. I hadn't been sure the 13th floor was physically connected to the rest of the building. I stumble out of the stairwell in the lobby, huffing and puffing. The run downstairs was the most intense cardio I've ever done in years. Sam is sitting at the concierge desk. I've never been so happy to see him. Sam! I exclaim, out of breath. You gotta make sure no one else takes elevator floor. The elevator 4, there's something terribly wrong with it. Hold on, Sam says in his thick New York accent. No one's taking elevator 4. I know the thing's broke. That's why it says out of order. Yeah, but it showed up anyway, and I got inside, and it stopped, and all the lights went out, and I ended up on the 13th floor. Boss, are you feeling all right? Sam asks, sounding genuinely concerned. It's impossible for the elevator to be running. Here, let me show you. Sam walks over to a fuse box in the elevator bank and opens it with the key he keeps on his belt. There's a different switch for each elevator. The switch labeled elevator 4, it's flipped to the off position. See? It's been like this since yesterday. Repair was supposed to be done tonight, but it got delayed on account of the storm. I protest, insisting that elevator was running. Sam doesn't buy it, but he shrugs and agrees to mention it to the repairman. Back at his desk, he scribbles down a note in red pen. I think Sam, and he calls an elevator for me. Elevator 2 opens, and I reluctantly step inside. I'm shaken and questioning my own sanity. But above all else, I'm grateful to be out of, well, wherever I was. The elevator lets me off on the 14th floor. When I step into the elevator bank, I make sure I can see lights across the street but through the frosted glass window. I pass the neighbor's kid on the corridor. Sure enough, the boy is the older sibling this time. When I walk into the apartment, dinner, it's already on the table. Veal. Cooked the way I expected. Kimberly's waiting. I hug her so tightly, making sure to check that her birthmark is properly placed. I'm so sorry I'm late, I say. The train broke down for about 20 minutes. The storm's really messing things up.
You must be starving. Dinner's getting cold. Go change and get some dry clothes and join me.
In the bedroom, I look out the window, admiring the view of the city. I decide not to tell Kimberly the truth. I don't want her to look at me the way Sam did when I tried to explain it to him. When my train of thought stops, as I recall a small detail from my conversation with Sam. When he wrote that note for the repairman, Sam wrote it with his right hand. Southpaw Sam, the left-handed boxer. I need to know if I'm driving myself crazy, or if I never left the 13th floor at all. I call Kimberly's cell phone. If I hear her answer in the dining room, I know it's really her, and I'm at home. She hollers from the dining room as I'm dialing, asking me to hurry up. I hit send. I wait. There's no audible ring in the apartment. Maybe it's on silent. I'm expecting to get her voicemail when she picks up.
Hello?
There is no corresponding sound from the dining room. The woman in the dining room isn't my wife, and this isn't my home. Kimberly, I whisper, it's Jacob. I need you to listen to me and just believe what I'm saying, 'cause it's gonna sound. Kimberly cuts me off.
Don't call me again, you scumbag.
She sounds disgusted. What? Kimberly, it's me.
Can you believe this guy?
She says, barely audible. She's not speaking into the receiver, but to someone else in the room. My stomach drops. I'm on the 13th floor with the woman. But the man, he's not here anymore.
It's one of those identity scammers calling.
Kimberly continues.
He's claiming he's you.
That was the end of that story. I honestly think that was well written. Definitely well done. It had a great mix of anxiety and fear and panic because they just could not understand what's going on. Almost like how you all can't understand what's going on. Okay, we're going to continue on. Just checking to see if we had anyone new arrive in our stream. I see Victor here, but I believe I may have mentioned him earlier. If I did not, I say welcome to you as well, Victor. Okay, we're going to be reading the next story. This was also written by Blue Wake. The title of the story is I'm a PhD student researching urban legends. My visit to Devil's Tower haunts me. Now, I want to be clear for you all. When I read these stories, I've gotten permission from the writers to read them. But if we want to continue bringing writers to our family, or temple of evil, I don't know what you would like to call it, but here, where we need the amazing stories from all, you all need to support your favorite authors. Ask them, or kidnap them and bring them to me. I don't care, but I need more so we can fulfill the prophecy, so we can survive the end. Yes, scary stories will save humanity. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue. I'm going to have a little drink. Dry mouth. That's tasty. So, as I was saying earlier, if you do want to support these authors, all of their information is in the description below. Any links that I have been provided, I've made sure to place below. You can support your favorite authors this way. You could even support your head patient or your master of the asylum if you so choose. Not asking you to do so. If you cannot afford to, do not spend any money. I will not accept any money from those who cannot afford to lose even that short amount, because these are hard times. I mean, when I kidnap you, I'll just be taking all your money anyway. But for the time being, you need that money to keep yourselves afloat. So do not put yourselves in harm's way financially by supporting your favorite narrators or authors. But if you are comfortable doing so, you may, and we would greatly appreciate it. And you don't have to support them monetarily. You can support them with good wishes, likes, subscriptions. I'm not meaning the paid kind. I'm meaning you subscribe to the channel. But make sure you provide some support to these authors so they can continue making great stories. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started on the next story. Again, the title is I'm a PhD student researching urban legends. My visit to the Devil's Tower haunts me. I'm a doctoral student at a major university in New England. To keep the experiences I'll soon disclose separate from my public academic persona, I won't say exactly where. I study cultural anthropology, which is a study of ideas, beliefs, traditions, and practices which shape human societies. The specific focus of my research is contemporary folklore, commonly known as urban legends. When I was a kid, I was fascinated with stories that my schoolmates relayed in whispers on the playground or at sleepovers, flashlights held low to illuminate their faces. These stories captivated me with their appeals to supernatural, horror, mystery, promising knowledge of forbidden secrets lurking under society's facades. Unlike some classic folktales, which are obviously fiction, urban legends are presented as truth. If you've heard an urban legend, you know the deal. This story really happened to so-and-so and so-and-so's friend's cousin's girlfriend. That beguiling promise of truth that if I looked closely enough, I'd find some of these tall tales aren't so tall after all. Maybe why I took an academic interest in urban legends. And if they are only stories, what is it that entrenches them in our collective consciousness, kept alive one generation to the next by word of mouth alone? That's the question I seek to answer in my upcoming dissertation. My research process consists of both review and academic literature and actual field work. In the field, I conduct archival research, personal interviews, and surveys of locations relevant to various urban legends. Research often explains the phenomena associated with certain stories. Take for instance, gravity hills. Many American towns contain roads where local legend says if you put your car in neutral, the spirit of children will push your car. The spirit of children killed in hit-and-run accidents. And they'll push your car uphill to prevent you from suffering a similar fate. However, research of public records usually proves that no children were fatally struck by automobiles in those locations. Review of scientific literature explains these roads as optical illusions, where an obscured horizon makes a downhill slope look like an uphill slope. Location surveys also come in handy. One example is my survey of New Jersey's Heartbeat Road. Folks in the town of Montville say that way back in the day, an axe-wielding maniac attacked a teenage couple on a wooded road and killed the girl. For years afterward, teenagers would park on the road and listen quietly to the sound of the girl's ghostly heartbeat. Inspecting the site myself, I found a defunct water pump house off the road. Back when the pump house was in operation, it would have emitted a sound that sounded like a loud heartbeat. A simple explanation. But some urban legends defy explanation. In rare instances, investigation only strengthens their claim. That brings me to one of the most terrifying experiences I have ever had in the field. It's my visit to Devil's Tower. I'd been on an extended research trip, visiting sites connected to several legends, including Heartbeat Road. After wrapping up Montville, I began my drive north to New England. A few stops planned along the way. The next was to Devil's Tower, less than an hour northeast. Now, Devil's Tower is an old stone structure that looms above Rio Vista, an extravagantly wealthy neighborhood in Alpine, New Jersey. Before Rio Vista was a residential neighborhood, it was part of an estate constructed by the sugar baron Manuel Rionda. The Rionda estate was sprawling, over 200 acres, and beautiful, nestled on cliffs overlooking the Hudson River. According to local legend, Rionda built the tower in the early 20th century to give his wife, Harriet, a view of New York City's vast skyline. But the towering skyscrapers of Manhattan weren't the only thing she could see. One night, Harriet was looking out from the tower when she noticed her husband with another woman. Filled with despair, Harriet leapt to her death from the tower. Sometime later, rumors of supernatural occurrences surrounding the tower began. Despite the eventual dissolution of the Rionda estate and later development of Rio Vista, the stories persist to this day. And then the most significant rumor concerns what happens when you drive in circles around the Devil's Tower, which serves as a roundabout at the end of a long road. There are a few versions of the story, but most agree that if you drive around Devil's Tower 3 times at night, Harriet Rionda's ghost will appear and cause your car to crash. Opinions are split on whether one must drive forwards or backwards to properly complete the ritual. Many legends I research involved small rituals like this one. Performing these rituals they provide valuable insight. But my supervising professor didn't always condone it. Sometimes they would require trespassing and other not so legal activity. They also weren't always safe. Putting your car in neutral on a busy road to see if it rolls uphill isn't the smartest idea. I almost always perform the rituals anyway. The night I traveled to Devil's Tower, my goal was simple. Test both versions of the ritual by driving around the tower 3 times backwards and 3 times forwards. As I turned to Rio Vista's long entry road, I was awestruck. Opulent chateau-style homes lined the road, set back behind massive lawns and thickets of manicured pine trees. The homes were protected by the type of walls you'd expect to find securing a medieval fortress. But these magnificent homes were sideshows to the true spectacle. The imposing Gothic tower at the end of the road. I drove closer, marveling at its grandeur. Large gray stones, it must have been 100 feet tall. I parked at the edge of the roundabout and stepped out to take a closer look. A series of glassless windows stretched up the tower, culminating in a row of 3 near the top. Long ago, they had been filled with real stained glass. Now, there was only an open, empty frame, exposing the tower's dark interior, where, legend said, Harriet Rionda could still be seen. At the tower's base was a giant archway, through which I could see the other side of the roundabout. The archway was gated, a sign warning against vandalism hanging from its iron bars. I read that the tower had been sealed off long ago to discourage mischievous teenagers, and there was no longer access to its peak. If I saw something up there, it wouldn't be a living human being. I chose to circle the tower backwards, first on a hunch that it was the real version of the ritual. Driving forwards was too simple for a supposed ritual, supernatural ritual, to survive as an urban legend for decades. It has to be a hassle. If it's too easy, everyone will do it, and the legend will lose its mystique and be forgotten. I was starting the car back up when I noticed another vehicle in my rear view. It had turned off a side street that snaked off the long road leading to the tower. The car was a few hundred feet behind me. Advancing slowly, expecting it to turn into one of the driveways along the road before it ever got close to me, I didn't hesitate. I pulled into the center of the roundabout, aligned with the archway at the base of the tower. I planned to use the archway as a marker. After passing it 3 times, I would know I'd completed 3 full circles. As I put the car in reverse, I realized the vehicle behind me hadn't stopped. It was so close now, I could see exactly what it was. A white hatchback, security emblazoned on its side. I should have expected such a luxurious neighborhood would have private security, but I had come too far to turn back now. I began driving in reverse. The security guard, who was no doubt tasked with deterring pests who came to see the tower, pulled into the roundabout to follow me. I was not dissuaded. Earlier in the day, I had practiced driving loops in reverse in an empty parking lot. I was confident I could do it safely. The security guard, a portly man in mall cop's uniform. I'm sorry, I just lost my spot. Bear with me 1 second here. Okay. The security guard, a portly man in a mall cop's uniform, trailed me as I drove in reverse. We were face to face, gliding in unison like synchronized skaters. It must have looked like something out of one of those Fast and Furious movies. The archway appeared beside me. One circle. The security guard laid on his horn, trying fruitlessly to get me to stop. I kept going and saw the archway again. 2 circles. As I crossed the halfway point of the final loop, the security guard flipped on the red and blue emergency lights atop his vehicle. I ignored it just for a few more seconds as we patched the archway once more. 3 circles. The security vehicle was facing me almost bumper to bumper, blocking my path forward. I couldn't put the car in drive and do the ritual in the other direction as I'd planned. I decided to pull over and talk to the security guard and explain to him I wasn't just some punk making troubles, but a scientific researcher. Maybe he wouldn't report me to the police. Maybe he'd even let me drive back around the tower and then leave. I pulled out of the middle of the roundabout back on into the long roadway. I started to pull over, watching the security vehicle drive towards me. Then, as it happened, the moment that still torments me in my nightmares. The security vehicle swerved wildly, accelerating until it escaped my rear view mirror's field of view. Out of sight, I heard the sickening sound of metal crunching. I bolted out of my car, ran towards the security vehicle. It crashed headfirst into one of the pine trees lining the road. The front of the car was totaled and the hood mangled like crumpled tinfoil. When I reached the driver's side window, the security guard was slumped over the steering wheel, its leather soaked in wet blood. Something dawned on me. When the security guard chased me as I circled the tower backwards, he'd completed 3 circles forwards. I looked away from the wreck and up at the tower. And I saw her standing in the center window at the top of Devil's Tower, shrouded in darkness of that decrepit chamber which had long been sealed shut, was a woman in early 20th century dress. Harriet Rionda looked down at the mayhem below and smiled. I'd been wrong about which variant of the ritual was correct. Driving around the tower backwards was a perversion of the real ritual, driving forwards. The This ritual stuck around for decades despite its simplicity because it actually worked. I called 911 and explained the events leading up to the crash truthfully to the responding officers. They conferred before one of them returned to talk to me. He was dead on impact, the officer said. It looks like after you let him driving around in circles, he became dizzy. Vertigo, that's what it's called. He lost control of the car. We're not going to charge you with anything. Just get on out of here. I was shocked. If the police thought I had caused the accident driving in an admittedly reckless manner, why wasn't I given so much as a ticket, much less arrested? Get on out of here, son, the officer repeated, for your own good. I understood then that he knew the truth. I was responsible for it's always going to haunt me. It's exactly what happened. I never anticipated I would unleash the deadly wrath of an angry spirit on another human's being. Got in my car and drove away. Out of the shadow, that abdominal tower cast over Rio Vista. Please understand, I will regret that disastrous night at Devil's Tower until the end of my days. I never anticipated I could do such a thing to another human being, but that's exactly what happened, and it will always haunt me. After that night, I canceled the remaining stops on my trip and returned to New England. I took a work from field work and worked on my dissertation, but I struggled with how to write about the tower. Eventually, I settled on addressing its dangers in a scientific manner acceptable to academics on the dissertation committee. I chose to reveal Devil's Tower's true nature only to a more open-minded audience. You, the readers of this forum. Footnote. The Devil's Tower is a stone clock tower located in Alpine, New Jersey. According to tradition, driving one's vehicle around the tower 3 times summons an angry spirit who crashes the driver's car. While this is mere superstition, anecdotal evidence suggests that the prescribed ritual serves to perpetuate the legend. A recent fatal wreck demonstrated that circling the tower disorients drivers, placing them at an elevated risk of crash. And that is the end of this story. Now, I do want to apologize. I had a spot where I kind of mixed up a couple lines. Unfortunately, with dyslexia, I tend to read things a little wonky and not realize it. So I do apologize to the author as well as to my patients and visitors that I did not intend to make an error. However, I unfortunately did and tried to run with it as best as possible. If you want to listen to any of these stories in the future, I always leave my streams up, so you can come back to listen to them at any time. In the near future here, I will begin cutting all of the stories into individual story chunks so they can be listened to at any time. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next story, but please make sure to give this some love and support to the author Blue Wake. His Reddit submission page is in the description below. Okay, let's move on to the next story. One moment. Just confirming I have it set correctly. Actually, we'll go ahead and grab a drink. Any of you guys need a short break, use the restroom. Now is the time. Then we'll get back on in gear and get going. Okay. We'll give it 2 more minutes, and then we're going to get back to our story. Let's see who's going. Who else? Is there anyone else here that I have missed? Anyone else join us for our the stories? Because as it looks at this time, it's Victor, Dustin, Mia. Still don't see anyone else at this time. There must be more. I'm sure there is. Either way, glad to see you guys all here. And we'll go ahead and get started now on the next story. This story is written by WeirdBryceGuy. WeirdBryceGuy. He also happens to... excuse me. Gotta pull this over. He does have... Sorry, I apologize. I got stumbled there. WeirdBryceGuy has really good stories on his Reddit page. So if you like the stories as narrated by me, please check out all of these authors that are listed below, their stories, because sometimes just reading it yourself can be more enjoyable than listening. But it is important we provide emotional support and occasionally financial, if you can afford it, to these authors. They worked hard and they deserve some recognition. All right, let's get started. The story that we're going to start with is The Deconstruction of Jasmine. My younger sister died when I was 17. She'd been 14 at the time, and her death had marked a significant change in my family. The change wasn't merely the kind of shift in atmosphere that you'd expect any house to undergo after the death of a child. Sure, there was openly expressed relief and sullen demeanors and periods of absolute silence despite the home being occupied by the remaining 3 members. But lo and behold, sorry, I just lost where I was at. I completely lost spot. I do apologize. Bear with me one moment. We'll get back to this here. Okay. Back. Beneath and beyond these immediate demonstrations of bereavement and depression, there existed a lower, subtly hidden layer of relief. That relief that I perceived in my parents, carefully curtailed when they knew I was within their sight, manifested itself in little behaviors and eccentricities that they had otherwise only displayed during moments of open and public happiness. Before my sister's death, on several occasions, I glimpsed my mother stare at some object in the house or some sight through a window, and in this daydreaming absent-mindedness, she'd smile. A momentary lapse in the depression. I at first thought that during these moments she was simply recalling some fond memory of her lost child, brought to the forefront of her thoughts by an object or sight in question. But after it happened a few times, I took it upon myself to direct my gaze towards the thing she'd been focusing on. I became certain that there was no correlation between the subjects and my sister. The objects or things seen through windows or TV were entirely unrelated to my sister. No parallel or tangential relation could be drawn between two typically disparate subjects. Dry mouth is making me stumble. I do apologize. Okay. Go back a second. The objects or the things seen through windows or on TV were entirely unrelated to my sister. No parallel or tangential relation could be drawn between the two typically disparate subjects. I knew my sister better than anyone, and since we were both homeschooled, there was never a period during which my mother and sister had spent considerable time without me. I'd always been aware, totally or partially, of any inside joke or personal exchanges between them. Some impression that I still can barely define caused me to refrain from questioning my mother about this decidedly odd behavior. I kind of felt it to challenge my mother's behavior, even slightly, would result in some unforeseen and beyond bizarre punishment or a revelation I wasn't ready yet to face. Anyway, my father also exhibited his own unusual moments of joyful reflection and mirth. When my sister was still alive, she and my father would go into the garage, wherein she would watch and sometimes help. I apologize. I lost my spot again. I think I need to go medicate one of my patients. They keep interrupting me, making me lose my spot. Bear with me just a short moment, and we'll be right back. Okay, I do apologize there, ladies and gentlemen. Clearly, a couple of my patients needed some extra medication. And work to do. Alright, back to where we were at. Alright. Let's see where we were just at. Okay. When my sister was still alive, she and my father would go into the garage wherein she would watch and sometimes help him in the restoration of one of the old cars or the tuning up of the presently used one. I had no interest in these things and had expressed this to my sister, who then told him. Otherwise, he would have invited me along as well. But my sister loved being a fledgling little auto mechanic and loved spending time with our dad during these moments of recreation. My dad hadn't considered these practically educational times part of our standard curriculum. My mother and I would lounge around in the great room, and she'd read books from her childhood to me. Well, when my sister was still alive, I'm sorry, I think I lost my place again. I apologize. There we go. I'm sorry. Well, since my sister's death, my dad had continued working on cars, making his repairs and restorations and fine-tuning. But rather than do these things with grim solemnity befitting a father who had lost a child, he tightens and polishes and oils with a smile when he thinks he's not being watched. The door that leads into the garage from the house is kept shut and has always been kept shut. Originally because while working, he and my sister would tell jokes that they knew my mother wouldn't approve of, but since my sister's death, there wasn't any reason for the door to be shut, but he kept it like that anyway. Luckily, the door can be opened with a crack without making much noise, and the sounds of his work were often so loud that I'm able to slip it open without him hearing. Through the reflections in polished metal and chrome and glass, I have seen him not just smiling, but grinning almost madly as he works on the cars. When I had witnessed these somewhat okay, something just happened. I apologize. Something literally just happened. The systems act just kaput. I have no idea what just happened. I apologize, everybody. Something went kaplooey. Okay, I got it all back up. If there's anybody still listening in the stream, if you could let me know just so I am aware, and I'll get back to this reading. I don't even know if they can hear me, if there's any errors there. No, it shouldn't be. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get back to it. I do apologize, everybody. Something went down. The entire story went poof, so I lost track. Obviously, I when the screen went down, there was nothing there to see. I had to reload the pages, so I do apologize. Okay, let's get back to this. We'll finish up the story here. When I had witnessed these somewhat careless exhibitions of inner glee, enough to be sickened by them, I came to the conclusion that the nature of my sister's death might have been less innocently accidental than presented. Being the sole remaining child, I had no one to immediately confide in, and none of the few acquaintances I had, not a single one close enough for the designation of friend, would have cared enough to invest in interest in my dilemma. My sister was virtually unknown to the broader neighborhood, and the few who had suffered or had sufficiently interacted with her to say that they knew her weren't exactly saddened by her death. My sister, whenever the opportunity arose, and these opportunities were extremely rare, would proclaim her intellectual and even moral superiority over the public school attendees of our neighborhood. Often even to their faces when we were allowed to hang out with them. I don't know exactly how she developed this perception, because neither myself nor my parents had expressed such a belief to her or about her. Our homeschooling was largely out of ease since my mother was a retired professor, and certain factors to be addressed later had prevented my sister and I from both leaving home for long stretches of time. Luckily, because I'd been around to silence or wrangle her, these boastings of alleged superiority never resulted in hostile confrontations between her and her quote-unquote inferiors. But still, she had embittered them, and I knew that I'd receive no companionship from them now that she's dead. Not a single person had even expressed their condolences for my loss. Without a confidant, without anyone who might see for themselves the odd behavior and vindicate my observations, I decided my only option of investigative progress from that point was the direct questioning of my parents, separately, about their states of mind in the wake of my sister's passing. Since my father had appeared almost evilly happy in his private moments, it unsettled me quite a bit. I decided to question my mom first. While her far-eyed reveries were considerably inappropriate in my opinion, there was never a suggestion of malice or familial corruption to them. She dreamed apathetically, and this made her seem the more approachable of the two. Apologize. One moment. I got really bad dry mouth. One moment. After a day's mathematics lesson, conducted with all the austerity, reverence, and soft-spoken speech of a mother who had lost a child, but must continue on with her duties, I asked my mom, while she prepared us some tea, how she'd been feeling since my sister's death. The question hadn't caught her off guard. I had hoped it might, but haven't really expected it to do. And she responded promptly, softly, that she was working through it and trying to keep her mind on the happier memories. And of course, she returned the question to me, and I responded similarly. Though I suspect that only my response had been the actual genuine response. The hug was then shared, initiated by her and reciprocated by me with not nearly as much enthusiasm. I then took my tea up to my room to reflect on the disappointingly brief interaction and plan the subsequent questioning of my father. When he's not working on cars, my father can more than likely be found in the den, watching a seamlessly endless collection of 80s and 90s action films he keeps in drawers and on the shelves of massive entertainment cabinet. Because of their unflinchingly violent nature, my mother had forbidden my sister from accompanying my father into the den. And despite not being restricted, I never followed him in either. I enjoy action movies, but I knew that this casual ritual was his time to be alone and allow his mind to sort of dissolve. I had a similar activity, reading, and my mom had her walks. My sister liked to draw, but she hadn't had enough time to develop this hobby into a proper passion before her life was stripped away. After finishing my tea, I went downstairs, crossed through the kitchen where my mother sat going over my homework, nodding to herself in satisfaction, and opened the doors to the den. As expected, my father was inside, sitting in his leather lounge chair, feet propped up onto the footrest that extended from the base of the chair. A movie was playing on the TV, something I'd seen before, and the speakers blared the shouted dialogue in perfect sonic distribution around the room. I hadn't mean to, but I'd accidentally caught him in one of his moments of secret joy. An almost devilish smile was spread across his face, even though the recognition wasn't one that would have elicited such a reaction. The sounds of a desperate pleas for help in the face of some ultra-violent threat had covered my footsteps, and I managed to catch several full seconds of observation before he noticed me. He then dropped that almost demonic visage from his face as if it hadn't been there at all. Okay. I apologize, but I think we're going to call it. I'm having difficulties. I do apologize, everybody. I did say this was going to be shorter. We're going to go ahead and continue the rest of the story on Wednesday. I greatly apologize, everybody. I just got a really pounding headache sneak up on me. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and end the evening. In case you have missed any part of the live stream or showed up late, I do leave the streams up on my channel. You can also direct friends and family to them to listen in case they're not able to make our visiting hours. Well, we've finally reached the end of our time together this evening. Visiting hours are now over, and while I hope to see you all here again, perhaps I can convince you to be permanent residents at the asylum. I am Beyond 5150, and I wish you all wonderful nightmares. Good night, sleep well, and just ignore the screams. So we're gonna go ahead and make sure that on Wednesday we're gonna have. I'll just add the extra time. I greatly apologize, you everybody, and it looks like Horror Queen 1212 just hopped in. I didn't get a chance to get to her stories either, and I feel terrible. I know I did read for part 1 of I'm a Zoologist and I Found Something Strange. She has completed the remaining parts to that story, so Wednesday we'll read those. If you guys have any ideas or anything you'd like to bring up, please go ahead and email it to me at toofarbeyond5150@gmail.com. I'll go ahead and post it. I will also be adding the link to my Discord for those who would like to join in. Could one of my mods go ahead and pop in my link, Discord invite link? We're going to go ahead and make sure that we do this from now on in the streams. That way we can progress and build my asylum. I need more people to keep it running, and with all the wonderful writers, it's important to me to make sure we have a proper little setup going, I think. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and I'll make sure that we get those out. Bear with me momentarily in grabbing the link. Here we go. Okay. Hopefully that's the correct link. Let's double check. Yeah, that's the download link. Got this one here. Blink. There's the link. That one should go directly to my server Beyond 5150. Welcome to the asylum. So from now on, we're going to go ahead and add that to our description so people can join in. I hope you all enjoyed listening to a little bit of help from my daughter, who did some of the voices and the young ladies in the stories. She may also be joining us more in the future. Thank you all for spending time with me this evening. I apologize deeply for having to cut the stream a little shorter. But Wednesday we will have plenty of stories, since I had many more to go through before I had to go ask for more. So I will see you all Wednesday. Thank you very much for joining us, and visiting hours are now over. Be sure, if you have anybody you would like to participate or provide some support to our authors, all the information is in the description panel below. Please give them some support, or at least show your appreciation for their hard work. Because without their stories, I won't have anything to narrate. So thank you all to all my writer friends and patients, and those who will be staying with us for the rest of eternity. Thank you. We'll continue. I'll see you guys all on Wednesday. Have a blessed evening, and go ahead and enjoy those screams you will hear in your head. Good night.